about it. Old people still want to see their the music they grew up with, but they don't want to go into town and stay up late. So what does Neil Sedaka do? He comes to the villages, and he probably has like a 6:00 concert that's over by 8:00, so you can still get home and watch Matlock, all right? But he plays to his crowds. He had 10 number one hits in various countries, okay? One of them was Twice. Breaking Up is hard to do. He did the fast version back in the 60s and then a slowed down version in the 70s. Been married to the same woman since 1962. Never divorced. Never had to split the check. Never had to write alimony. He's worth $300 million, folks. And he's Jewish. Neil Diamond, once again, a Brill Building boiler room star. In fact, before that he wrote songs for Sunbeam Music, and he wrote one song a week. Talk about prolific. I mean, Neil Diamond. He's a writer, he's a performer, and a record recorder. He hit the trifecta. He does it all. He performs. He does the albums from the music that he writes, and he goes out on tour. So he does all three. He gets paid 3 times every time. How did Neil Diamond start writing his clever lyrics? Well, he wrote poetry to girls to get them to like him, and it worked. So he expanded that into music lyrics. Okay, some of his Brill Building hits, Sunday and Me, Jay and the Americans, had another song by the Monkees, I'm a Believer. You probably heard of that. I mean, many people have recorded I'm a Believer. And Neil Diamond gets paid every time you hear that song and every time you watch Shrek. He's getting paid. He wrote songs for Deep Purple, Lulu, Cliff Richard. Some of his songs include Solitary Man, Cherry Cherry, Kentucky Woman, Sweet Caroline's, Cracklin' Rosie, Song Sung Blue, I Am, I Said. Lots and lots and lots of touring and recording and writing, the trifecta. In the 80s, he went into movie making. He starred in The Jazz Singer and did a pretty good job at it. Okay. Now, he did retire last year. He's 78 years old, but he has Parkinson's disease now, so he retired. Neil Diamond, married 3 times, but the last time, for a long time, he's worth $175 million. And he's Jewish. The last one on this list is, in my opinion, the most interesting. The guy who has taken the music industry, making money in the music industry, to the pinnacle. Herb Alpert, okay? Now, Herb Alpert has been writing songs since 1957. 62 years he's been writing songs. He wrote It's a Wonderful World by Sam Cooke. That was Herb Alpert, okay? That's how long ago he's been writing songs. He wrote a lot of songs and thought, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and record some of this material myself. So I'm going to write it, I'm going to record it, and I'm going to start a record company. So him and Jerry Moss, they started Carnival Records. Didn't like the name, so they changed it. Albert and Moss Records. You know it as A&M Records. That's right. Herb Alpert even owned the record company. So he had the five-fecta. He wrote it. He recorded it. He performed it. And he produced it. Now, Herb Alpert one day went to Tijuana because he was an L.A. boy, grew up in L.A., worked in L.A., so he went to Tijuana one day, not that far away from L.A., went to a bullfight, and thought that the music was amazing, mariachi music. And he thought there was a market in the U.S. for mariachi music if he fine-tuned it the right way. So he recorded a song called Lonely Bull as Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass. Now, there was no Tijuana Brass back then because Herb Alpert played all the instruments on the album and dubbed them over himself. So you talk about the trifecta, the four-fecta. This is the five-fecta. He was the band as well. He didn't pay anybody. He collected all the money himself. Well, as he got more popular and he needed to record more music, he couldn't do this. So he had to hire a LA session musician. So what he did is he hired the Wrecking Crew, a very popular, prolific studio band. But then his music became so popular, he had to tour. Well, he couldn't hire the Wrecking Crew to tour because they had other gigs. They didn't tour. They were studio musicians, okay? So he invented the Tijuana Brass. He put together a bunch of guys who he knew, 4 Italian guys, 2 Jewish guys, and just a regular old American guy. He called them 4 lasagnas, 2 bagels, and an American cheese. Absolutely no Mexicans in the Tijuana Brass. None. Not even one. Not even Herb Alpert. He's Jewish. Shocking. Clark Gum used a song of Herb Alpert's called Mexican Shuffle for their Tea-Berry Gum. Remember, they called it the Tea-Berry Shuffle. He even rebranded the song to get the check. Another cash cow for Alpert. A Taste of Honey, Zorba the Greek, Lollipops and Roses, Tijuana Taxi, Spanish Flea, the gay dating game music. That was all Herb Alpert music. He took it to TV, to movies, to commercials. Herb Alpert was everywhere. In the 1960s, he had a number 1 hit called This Guy's in Love, the only song he ever sang. And by the way, he didn't write it. Burt Bacharach did. So Burt Bacharach gets paid every time Herb Alpert sings This Guy's in Love. In the late 1970s, he had another hit called Rise. That was an instrumental that he wrote and produced. Herb Alpert is the only person in the history of music to have a number 1 instrumental and a number 1 sung song. Only one. No one else has. In 1997, Rise was sampled in another number 1 song, number 1 hit. It was by the notorious B.I.G., his song Hypnotize. He used Rise in that song. In other words, Alpert got paid once again. He's still performing, folks. He's still writing. In fact, he has a new video that came out in June of this year called Skinny Dip, a new song, a new video. And again, he doesn't make a ton of money off of this stuff, but he still makes money off of this stuff. He owns a house in Malibu with 30 acres of seaside or seafront. 30 acres. It's amazing. Guy's got tons of money. Okay? Still working. He's 84 years old, still producing, still singing, still performing. Herb Alpert, folks, is worth $850 million. Almost a billionaire. Married twice, but the first one really doesn't count. He's been married to the current wife since 1974. And he's Jewish. Now, I find the lives of all these men absolutely fascinating. They're among the most successful in the music business, but they don't stand out like many others. Okay, when you think of when you start to think of the most popular folks in music, the richest folks in music, you would never think of Neil Sedaka, Neil Diamond, Herb Alpert, Neil Sedaka, Don Kirshner, Burt Bacharach. You'd never think of those people. But they've got more money than most. In fact, Herb Alpert has about the same amount of money as Paul McCartney. Think about that for a minute, okay? They're both right there. Paul McCartney and Herb Alpert. You'd never thought that. But I find this amazing, the business end of that business, okay? And like I said, these guys don't stand out like many do. Many of the frontline performers are not worth much money at all. Who was I reading about the other day? Lita Ford, okay? Lita Ford was very popular in the day. She had a lot of success. Is still around today. Lita Ford is worth less than $2 million. I have no idea why, but I'd have to guess that she didn't write her own music. She doesn't own her own rights, and she just wasn't a very good business person, okay? Bad business deals. They don't own their own material. They didn't write their own songs. Drugs, alcohol, divorce, stop working, piss people off. All that costs money, folks. all that contributes to the dissolve of the bottom line. Now, you may ask yourself, why do I mention their age, their marital status, even their ethnicity, okay? Well, again, I like to take these stories, I like to take these essays and put a meaning to them. Hopefully this was entertaining. If you're still listening for over 40 minutes, I have to think that you're entertained, because you wouldn't sit there and be bored for 40 minutes. So if you're still listening to this podcast, I succeeded in making it entertaining. But there also is a lesson to this. Also, there's a reasoning behind this essay. There's a method to my madness where I'm going to plug it in and make it worthwhile, where perhaps, just perhaps, you can find something in this podcast and put it towards your life, put it towards your success. But I mention all this for your benefit, because all of these individuals, each and every one of them, are very, very, very successful. And they're still working at advanced ages. Often they're still married to the same person. In other words, they didn't write an alimony check. They didn't have all the drama. They didn't take half of their money and give it away because they couldn't get along with their spouse. Now, while if you're not a multi-talented musician or a songwriter, and I would have to say most of you listen to this podcast are not. I am not. But you're probably not that. But you can do most all the other things that these people did as well. You can work hard, very, very hard. You can find something that you do, because it's the old adage, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. If you hate your job, you need to start looking for another one yesterday. Okay? You need to really enjoy what you do. And don't always look at retirement. I mean, if you're 45 years old thinking, oh my God, only 20 more years to retirement, then I can go ahead and, no, don't do that. Please don't do that. Don't look at retirement. I'm never going to look at retirement. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm always going to do what I'm doing now. But if you stop working and sit on the dead pecker bench, then you start spending money. And then you run out of money, and then you run out of things to do, and then you drink too much, and then you atrophy, and then you get into bad health. Consider doing something that you love, and you never have to truly retire, okay? There's no reason you have to retire at 50, 60, or 70. Continue to work. Stay married. Don't get divorced. Stay married. If you don't marry someone who you love and you're certain you can stay with them for the rest of your life, then just don't get married, okay? But stay married. And remember, while money can't buy happiness, there's less to be sad about if you have the money. Does that make sense? That makes a whole lot of sense, okay? Oh, and the last thing that maybe you can do and maybe you can't. I mean, all these folks were Jewish, and I found that amazing. I've always had a lot of respect for the fact that Jews in this country are a very small minority, but they have a lot of success. And if you look at the underlying reason, it's two words: hard work. You just keep on working hard. If you keep on working hard and somebody says, have you succeeded yet? You don't say no, you just say not yet. Okay? Maybe it'll take 10, 20, 30, 40 years before you really grab that gold ring. But if you never stop, you will eventually. Okay? And by the way, if you want to, convert to Judaism. Sammy Davis Jr. did. But all the other things that I mentioned, you can do. And while you may not be a very talented musician, you can look at what you do it well, and perhaps branch out and take more pieces of the pie and put them in your own pocket. Okay? Think about it. Well, that's it. I'm done. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's the email address. Send me your email address. I will send you the link to the latest podcast upon publication. You can download it and listen to it at your leisure. And please,